The moment I saw the balance on my screen, I thought the app had glitched. $0 and send new 3. Not low. Not overdrawn. 0. A perfectly round, perfectly devastating 0, where 11 years of savings used to live. I was sitting in a hotel room in Glasgow, still in the blazer I'd worn to my conference presentation that morning. I'd given a 40-minute talk on forensic accounting methodology to a room full of European auditors, and I'd felt good about it, genuinely good. The kind of good that makes you want to call someone and say, "Did you hear what I just did?" I was going to call my sister. I almost did. Instead, I refreshed the screen 3 times, because that's what you do when your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are already reading. 0. I called the bank, sat on hold for 19 minutes listening to jazz I will never forgive. When the representative finally answered, she confirmed what the app had shown me. The account had been accessed 11 days prior. The funds, $218 or 100 thens, had been transferred out in 2 separate transactions, 48 hours apart, just under the $10,000 reporting threshold each time. Structuring. I recognized it immediately. I work with it professionally. I just never expected to see it applied to my own money. "Was there anything else I can help you with today?" she asked. I said no. I hung up. I sat there in my blazer in a Glasgow hotel room and I stared at the wall for a very long time. Let me back up. My name is not important. What's important is that I'm 31 years old, I'm a forensic accountant based in Calgary, and 8 months before that Glasgow hotel room, I was offered a contract position with an international auditing firm, a rotational assignment across their Edinburgh and London offices. It was the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice. My firm encouraged me to take it. I arranged a leave of absence. I sublet my condo. I put my things in storage. The one thing I couldn't easily deal with was my investment account. I'd been building it since I was 19. Part TFSA, part RSP, part a non-registered account I'd opened specifically for medium-term savings. The total, as of the day I left Canada, was $218,400. That number had taken 11 years of working, of not buying the things I wanted, of putting money away every single month even when money was tight. It was my down payment fund. My future. My proof to myself that I was going to be okay. My sister offered to help manage it while I was gone. Her name doesn't matter either, but I'll call her what she is, my younger sister, 28, living in Edmonton. She'd been struggling financially since her relationship ended the previous year. I'd lent her money twice, once $3,000, once $1,500, neither of which she paid back, but I wasn't keeping score. She was family. She was going through something hard. I understood. When I told her I was leaving for 8 months, she offered immediately, "Let me be your contact person here. If anything comes up with the banks, I can deal with it. I have your SIN, I know your passwords, it'll be fine." I thought about it. Genuinely thought about it. I should have said no. I know that now. But she was my sister, and I was overwhelmed with the logistics of preparing to live abroad for 8 months, and she seemed to genuinely want to help. And I told myself that wanting to help meant something. So I said yes. I gave her my banking credentials. I sent her a list of my accounts, their balances, what they were for. I told her the non-registered account was my down payment fund and was not to be touched under any circumstances. I made her repeat it back to me. She did. She said, I know, I'm not going to touch it." 8 months later, Glasgow, 0. I didn't call her that night. I know that might seem strange. Your money disappears and you don't immediately call the person who had access to it. But here's the thing about working in forensic accounting for 6 years. You learn very quickly that you do not tip off the subject of an investigation before you have your documentation in order. That's what I told myself. The truth is probably that some part of me already knew, and I wasn't ready to hear her voice say it out loud. I spent the next 4 hours on my laptop. I pulled every transaction record I could access. The 2 transfers had gone to an account I didn't recognize. I documented everything. Timestamps, amounts, reference numbers. I sent myself copies. I forwarded them to a personal email address I keep separate from everything else. The one my employer doesn't know about. The one I use for things I need to be sure I can access no matter what happens. Then I called my bank's fraud line and reported unauthorized transactions. They were cautious. Technically, I had given my sister my credentials. Technically, access was granted. The representative explained that this complicated the fraud claim significantly and that I would need to work with law enforcement if I believed a crime had occurred. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called my mother. This was my mistake. Not the only one, but the one I regret most strategically. I told her what I'd found. I told her the account was empty. I told her I thought my sister had taken the money. There was a pause. And then my mother said, "That's a very serious accusation. Are you sure you're not confused about what the account was for? You left her in charge of your finances. Maybe she was managing them the way she thought was best." The way she thought was best? I was so stunned I almost laughed. Managing them the way she thought was best. $218,000 moved in structured transfers designed to avoid reporting thresholds to an account in my sister's name, and my mother was suggesting this might be financial management. "Mom," I said, "I need to know if you knew about this." Another pause. "Longer. Your sister has been going through a very difficult time," she said. "She needed help. We thought you could help her. You have so much, and she has so little right now." We thought. So it wasn't just my sister. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I sat in the dark in my hotel room and I thought about the word "we" and what it meant, and how long this had apparently been a conversation that did not include me. I flew home 6 weeks early. I told my Edinburgh contact there was a family emergency, which was true, and I booked a flight for the following morning. I didn't sleep. I watched the Atlantic pass beneath the plane and I made lists in the Notes app on my phone. Everything I needed. Everything I was going to do. By the time I landed in Calgary, I had already retained a lawyer. Her office was on the 9th floor of a building downtown, and she had one of those faces that makes you feel like she has seen everything and found most of it disappointing. I liked her immediately. I laid out everything I had. The account records, the transfer documentation, the timestamps, the structuring pattern. She looked at the papers for a long time without speaking. "Your sister had your credentials," she said finally. "Yes, you gave them to her voluntarily. Yes, you gave them to her voluntarily." With explicit instructions that one specific account was not to be accessed. "Do you have that in writing?" In a text message. 2 text messages, actually. And a voice memo I recorded after our phone call, summarizing what was said. She looked up. "You recorded a memo after the phone call?" "I do that sometimes," I said. "Professional habit." She almost smiled. "All right, here's where we are." She walked me through it carefully. Unauthorized access to financial accounts is a criminal matter in Canada under the Criminal Code, specifically fraud and theft. The structured transfers were an additional issue. The fact that I had granted access complicated the civil side, but the explicit verbal and written instruction not to touch the down payment account, combined with the structuring pattern, which suggested deliberate concealment, made a strong criminal case. The texts were evidence. The voice memo was evidence. The transfer records were evidence. "What about my parents?" I asked. My mother said, "We thought." She implied they knew. My lawyer wrote something down. "That could constitute counseling an offense under the criminal code," she said, "depending on what we can establish." I asked her what our next step was. "File a police report," she said, "today, if possible." I went to my local RCMP detachment that afternoon. I brought a printed folder with everything organized chronologically. The officer who took my statement, a woman about my age with tired eyes and a very thorough approach to paperwork, thanked me for being so well organized. I told her I was a forensic accountant. She nodded slowly, the way people do when they realize the person across from them is going to be a persistent problem for whoever wronged them. "We'll be in touch," she said. I called my sister from the parking lot. I had thought about this call for 16 hours. I had decided not to lead with accusations. I had decided to give her the opportunity to tell me herself. Because a small part of me, the part that grew up sharing a bedroom with her, the part that braided her hair for school pictures, the part that drove 4 hours to Edmonton when her relationship ended and sat on her kitchen floor with her while she cried, that part wanted to be wrong. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey," she said. Her voice was light, normal, the voice of someone who had not done anything. "Hey," I said. "I'm home." A beat. Just a fraction of a second too long. "Oh, already? I thought you weren't back until." "There was a family emergency," I said. "I came home early." "Oh no, is everything okay?" I thought about that for a moment. "I looked at my accounts," I said. Silence. "The non-registered savings account," I said. "The one I told you twice, specifically not to touch." More silence. And then, in a voice that was trying very hard to sound casual and failing, I was going to pay it back. There it was. Not I didn't do it, not what are you talking about. There it was. Not I didn't do it, not what are you talking about. Straight to I with an a pay it back, which is the sentence of someone who knows exactly what they did and has been rehearsing explanations for months. With what? I asked. I made some investments. They're going to pay out. It took longer than I expected. The crypto market has been, you put my $218,000 into crypto. It wasn't all. I kept some of it in case you needed to access something. I needed seed capital. And I knew you weren't using it. And I thought you thought it was yours to use. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. I had nothing to say to that. There is nothing to say to that. She had looked at 11 years of my savings, and she had decided that her plans were more important, and she had structured the transfer specifically to avoid triggering bank alerts, and she had said nothing to me for 8 months, and she had planned to fix it before I noticed. As though I were not a forensic accountant who had noticed the moment I looked at a bank screen. I've already filed a police report, I said. And I've retained a lawyer. I wanted to tell you myself. She made a sound I couldn't interpret. Not quite a cry. Something harder than that. You called the police on your own sister. You took $218,000 from your own sister. She hung up. My parents called 20 minutes later. First my mother, then my father, then my mother again. When my father's call went to voicemail, I answered my father's call because I thought even then that he might be different. He wasn't. This has gone too far, he said. Family doesn't do this to family. Whatever she took, we can work this out together. You don't bring the law into family business. Dad, I said, she structured the withdrawals. Do you know what that means? It means she moved the money in amounts designed to stay under the federal reporting threshold. That's not someone who made a mistake. That's someone who knew it was wrong and tried to hide it. She's your sister. I know who she is. You could ruin her life over this. She already made that choice, I said. When she took the money, when she didn't tell me, when she invested it in something that lost value and then stayed silent for 8 months hoping I wouldn't notice. Your mother and I think, were you part of this? Silence. Dad, I need to know. Were you part of this decision? We discussed the possibility that you could help her, that you wouldn't miss it for a short time. I ended the call. I sat in my car in the RCMP parking lot for a while after that. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I was too angry, and the anger was bigger than the grief, and I needed the anger then. I needed it to stay clear. The investigation moved the way investigations do, slowly and then all at once. My lawyer was in contact with the police regularly. The structuring was documented with the police regularly. The structuring was documented. My sister's bank records were subpoenaed. What they found was not pretty. The money had gone in. Most of it had gone out again, into a series of cryptocurrency positions that had lost between 40 and 70% of their value by the time the investigation began. She had spent a portion of it. A new laptop, rent payments she'd been behind on, a trip to Mexico in March. The trip to Mexico. She had sent me a photo from that trip. A beach at sunset. Miss you, big sis, the caption said. I had liked the photo. She was charged with fraud over $5,000 under Section 389E of the Criminal Code of Canada. The structuring added additional complexity to the case. My parents were investigated but ultimately not charged. There wasn't sufficient evidence that they had counseled the specific offense, only that they had known and not reported it. That distinction matters legally. It didn't matter much to me personally. My lawyer pursued civil recovery simultaneously. The crypto accounts were worth approximately $61,000 at the time of recovery. A court order compelled their liquidation. My sister's car, a 2022 SUV she bought partly on credit, partly with what I now understood was my money, was assessed. There were other assets, modest ones. In total, the civil recovery came to just under $74,000 of the original $218,400. The rest was gone. I want to be honest about that because the comment sections of stories like mine always want a clean resolution, a full recovery, a number that matches what was taken. It doesn't always work that way. Fraud is expensive to recover from even when you win. I won, mostly. I got $74,000 back, and I got a criminal conviction on record. And I got the knowledge that I had done everything correctly. I documented, I retained counsel, I filed the report. I did not let anyone talk me out of it. I lost $144,400 and 8 months, and my sister and my parents and the particular kind of peace that comes from believing your family would not do this to you. My sister pleaded guilty. I was not there for it. My lawyer sent me a text message with the outcome, and I was sitting at my desk in my Calgary office, back at work, back to finding other people's hidden money, and I read it and I set my phone face down and I went back to the spreadsheet I'd been working on. It felt smaller than I expected it to, the guilty plea. I had expected something to shift, some weight to lift. Instead, it just felt like a document being filed. A thing that had happened, now officially recorded. My mother sent me a message a week later. It said, "I hope someday you'll understand that we were trying to help everyone." I read it twice. I didn't respond. My father sent nothing. My sister sent a letter through her lawyer, a formal apology required as a condition of sentencing. It was 4 paragraphs long. The second paragraph said she hoped I understood that she had fully intended to repay the amount. The third paragraph said she hoped we could find a path forward as a family. The fourth paragraph said she was committed to rebuilding trust. I kept the letter because my lawyer said to keep everything. I put it in the same folder as the bank records and the text messages and the voice memo I recorded after the phone call where I explicitly told her not to touch the account. Filed, organized, documented. That's what you do with things you need to have but don't want to look at. I've thought a lot about the moment in Glasgow when I first saw the zero. I've thought about what would have happened if I hadn't been who I am. If I'd panicked, called my sister immediately, given her time to construct a story. I've thought about what would have happened if I'd listened to my parents and handled it as a family, which in practice would have meant negotiating with someone who had already demonstrated she would say whatever was necessary to protect herself. I've thought about what I lost, and I've thought about what I still have, and I've thought about the specific arithmetic of starting over at 31 with $74,000 recovered and 11 years of savings mostly gone. It's not where I plan to be, but I want to say something clearly. For anyone sitting with a similar decision right now, anyone who has discovered that someone they trusted has done something unforgivable and is now being told by the people around them that calling it what it is would be going too far. Going too far is not the risk you face. Not going far enough is the risk you face. Not going far enough is the risk you face. Not documenting, not lawyering up, not filing the report, not holding a line when your mother says she needed help, and your father says family doesn't do this, and your sister says I was going to pay it back. Those are not reasons. They are the sounds that people make when they want you to absorb the cost of what they did. I'm a forensic accountant. I find hidden money for a living. I know what structuring looks like, I know what deliberate concealment looks like, and I know what it means when someone moves $218,400 in carefully sized increments and says nothing for 8 months. I know exactly what that is. It is not a misunderstanding. It is not a cry for help. It is not a family matter. It is fraud. And the people who did it knew that. They were counting on the fact that I would not. They miscounted. I keep coming back to that hotel room in Glasgow. The dark, the jazz still stuck in my head from 19 minutes on hold, the perfectly round zero where 11 years used to be. What I understand now that I didn't understand then is that the zero didn't happen because my sister was desperate. Desperation doesn't structure transfers in carefully calculated increments to stay under federal reporting thresholds. Desperation doesn't send a sunset photo from Mexico with, "Miss you, big sis," while the clock runs down on a plan to fix it before I noticed. What happened required deliberate thought. It required knowledge of how banking alerts work. It required sustained silence across 8 months and dozens of ordinary conversations. That's not desperation. That's a decision, made repeatedly, every single day I was gone. I thought about what made the difference, not just an outcome, but in how I was able to hold myself together through it. Part of it was professional. I knew what I was looking at. I knew how to document, how to sequence, how to present evidence in a way that couldn't be argued with. But the technical knowledge only mattered because I was willing to use it honestly, even when the honest thing was devastating. There were moments, and I won't pretend there weren't, where I wanted to call my lawyer and say, let's just settle this quietly, where the idea of my sister in a courtroom made me feel sick in a way that had nothing to do with money, where I sat in my car outside the RCMP detachment and thought about all the specific ordinary things we had been to each other and wondered if I was making a mistake. I wasn't making a mistake. I wasn't making a mistake. And I think knowing that, really knowing it, not just telling myself it, required something that isn't just intelligence and isn't just toughness. It required being clear about what was actually right, not what was comfortable, not what would keep the peace or preserve the version of my family I wanted to believe in. What was right? She had taken something that wasn't hers. She had concealed it. She had let me go on being her sister in good faith, while she managed her timeline and hoped I wouldn't look too closely. The people who raised us had decided together that this was acceptable, as long as it was temporary, as long as I didn't notice. That decision had consequences, and those consequences were mine to name. Resilience, I've learned, isn't the absence of grief. I grieved. I'm still grieving, in the specific dull way that you grieve something that isn't a death, but feels adjacent to one. I grieved the version of my sister I thought I knew. I grieve the dinners that will not happen, the calls that will not come, the particular texture of being known by someone since childhood. That grief is real, and I'm not interested in pretending it isn't. But resilience is what happens when you grieve and keep going anyway, when you file the police report with your hands shaking, when you sit across from your lawyer and lay out 11 years of your life in a manila folder and stay steady, when your father tells you family doesn't do this and you say quietly that she already did. My sister counted on the fact that love would be bigger than accountability. For a lot of families, it would have been. I understand that, and I don't judge it, but she miscounted, because what I learned a long time ago, from the work I do, from watching what happens to people who don't protect themselves, from watching what happens to people who do, is that letting someone avoid consequences is not kindness. It's just a different kind of harm, slower and quieter, paid by everyone who comes after. I recovered $74,000. I lost $144,400 and a family. I went back to work. I am rebuilding. That is what it looks like when you do the right thing. Not a clean recovery, not a perfect ending, just the knowledge that you held the line, even when it cost you everything you hoped you wouldn't have to pay.